Call to order our Committee of the Whole meeting and recognize that we're holding our meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Sechot and Hupachesit First Nation. Would somebody like to move approval of our agenda? So moved. Second. Any questions or comments on the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. And we have meetings from our meeting held, minutes, thank you, from our meeting held at 4 p.m. on January 20th, 2020. Would we like to move approval? Move to adopt. All in favor? Carried. And unfinished business. So the first item we have, of course, is a 5-year financial plan bylaw, 2020 to 2024, bylaw number 5003. So council has given first reading to the 5-year financial plan, and at this meeting our intent is to make changes. We haven't made any changes as a council yet. So our intent is to start a process of making the changes that we would like to see before we put forward second and third reading. CAO, do you want to order the Director of Finance could just give us an update on where we're at with the budget and
Madam Mayor,
what's changed since last meeting?
The next item on your agenda is the Acting Director's report, and I think she's best suited to tell you what's changed since the last time.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. So as you can see on the screen behind you, we do have a summary of changes that have affected our budget. Currently, we are sitting at an impact to taxpayers in average single-family homes at 5.3%. Here's a summary of the changes that we've made. What the lines that say no impact, it either has to do with items that are coming from a different fund from the operating fund. So it may have been gas tax or IRF, therefore it's not impacting taxation. So we have a few changes to road and sewer construction projects. We have 4th Avenue Bruce to Melrose, which is a sewer project, it is a storm project. So we have moved that from sewer into operating for $80,000. The deferral of the server upgrade that was mentioned at a prior meeting where Mr. Pellick had wanted to move his server upgrade into the 2023 year. That's out of the IRF fund, so there's no impact. We have a couple different lines here that relate to the SCBA gear addition into our budget. So there will be a report later on that, but you will see there is a deferral of the Homatro tool from our operating budget for $55,000, as well as the deferral of the Dodge Dakota from IRF. That has no impact on taxation, so you'll see that no impact line. So we've reallocated operating reserve funds that were for the purchase of a fire truck now towards the SCBA purchase. So you'll see no impact on that because those funds were reserved in our operating reserve coming from a prior year. And then we do have addition of the SCBA gear in 2020 operating. So the impact of that is just the $69,857. That is additional to our operating budget. So we have road construction and sewer projects. So we did a little bit of deferring of the relining program. Initially it was about $600,000 and it was a group of 5 projects. So we've looked at the scope of that. We also have some relining in sewer that needs to be done as well. So we are going to group some sewer and storm projects together and defer $300,000 of that work. So we do have also another addition would be the City Works facility relocation plan. We've have that coming from our gas tax fund, so that would be no impact, but that was for $50,000. One thing we just had recently found out, January 27th, we received our renewal quote from Aon for our insurance. With significant increases of $218,000. We did a statement of values this year. We did a big appraisal, all of our assets. Some assets weren't included in prior appraisals because they were newer and just weren't included. So we did see quite a bump this year. So that's been added. In addition to that, we did prorate the salary expense for the additional planner coming in, which would be an estimated start date of March. So you have a net impact of $5,848.
Thank you. Council, are there questions? Councillor Corbeil.
Just a question on the insurance. That's $218,000 more than we already pay?
Correct.
So what do we pay a year?
Average from prior years, it's actually over the last 7 years has actually come down quite a bit. It ranged from $300,000, and last year we had that down to about $267,000. So about every 3 to 5 years, we will do an appraisal and we will do a statement of values for our insurers to prepare our policies. We did have the Bainbridge treatment facility project that was not included in our prior insurance renewal. It was a newer asset. So last time they did the appraisal, it was not included simply because it's a newer asset. So we've included that addition. We also do have a number of different other market factors that are involved for renewing building insurance, as well as claim processing. So any claims we've had against the city also impact our insurance rate as well. And kind of like ICBC, they've decided they're going to go back 3 years as well and look at the impact of claims that it's had and our net losses and how it compares to how much they actually make off the policy itself. So there were some changes on that.
Do we shop around for other quotes?
We certainly do. There was a quote shop around, I probably think around October. The prior director of finance did do some shopping around. And this year we went with our broker Aon, and they went around collecting quotes from other insurance providers for us as well.
Okay, well, thank you.
Just as a follow-up to that, did we explore using the Municipal Insurance Association?
I wasn't a part of that actual process of looking out. I know that CIO Ply had talked to the prior director about looking at the Municipal Insurance Agency and other places, but I wasn't involved in it.
CIO, can you comment on that?
Madam Mayor, I recall the conversation, but I can't say for sure either way if we took a price quote from MFI. But if council wants us to going forward, we certainly can.
I would like to explore that. Every time we go to AVICC and hear a presentation from Municipal Insurance Association, we hear that we're the only community on Vancouver Island not using them, and that they're owned by municipalities and seems to be the choice insurance agency of municipalities, and I've never understood why we don't use them. We have asked before, but it's always been midway through our term, so maybe now is the time to switch, especially if, that is just that's an insane increase.
We left MFI because it was cheaper to go with private insurance, but there are a number of values, legal advice and things like that come with that insurer, so staff would be very happy to explore a competitive price quote.
Okay. Do you need a motion for that?
Not at this meeting, but at a future meeting.
I think we should be exploring it now, though, if we're looking at $218,000 added to our budget.
Maybe the acting director can speak to that, our ability to transition now.
I'd have to look at the particulars of our renewal contract to see if we were able to accept this contract and then go out and see, get other quotes and see if we were able to switch half year. I'm not certain. I'd have to take a look.
But didn't we just hear, because this wasn't in our previous budget document, so have we just heard about the $218,000?
Yes, the renewal just came through on January 27th. So I received that package on the 29th.
So I'm not understanding if we are in a contract that we can't get out of, but we are...
Sorry, Madam Mayor. Our insurance expires January 31st. So technically, I had till that date to renew. Okay. So I do have to go ahead and renew. at that time, so I have done that. I can look and see if we are able to, halfway through a year or after, we do look and see at other insurance quotes to see if we are able to switch over.
My thought is just that with an increase this significant, I think this should be coming to council before we renew. That's a huge increase, and I've never personally understood why we don't use the Municipal Insurance Association since everyone else does. I have a hard time believing it's more expensive if every other municipality uses it. So I think this would be a great time to seriously explore it, and very quickly.
Absolutely.
Councillor Poon had a question.
Thank you. Some of my questions have already been answered, but I think what I've noticed with the insurance industry is they are going through a lot of changes, and I've noticed some people cannot get insurance. So I'm glad to hear that we can get insurance.
Thank you. Councillor Solda?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious to know why, as a homeowner too, I know it's different municipal and homeowners, but why we could pay for 3 months and then cancel out after we take a look at it instead of the whole year. I mean, have we paid the whole year? Is that?
We have not paid anything yet on that contract. So I'd have to look through the renewal contract itself and talk to our insurance manager to see if it is possible. I don't want to lead you astray and say that it is possible. I would need to do some homework and make sure. But I definitely can get on that.
And
make
Madam
sure.
Mayor, just one other thing. Sometimes with the insurance, when they know you're looking for somewhere else, especially this kind of money,
Yeah,
they're going to change their tune a little bit. Maybe.
maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions on this side?
I just think we should bring the recommendation to council on Monday. Do we need a motion?
CAO?
Recommendation?
I don't think we need a motion here. Do we need a motion, Twyla, to recommend to council?
Madam Mayor, I would recommend, if you did want to take some action, that you would recommend, committee members would recommend to council that council then would consider this at your
Explore
February
MIA.
10th, yes, to explore.
Madam Mayor, can I just add, this is a committee of the whole meeting, so for the people who are watching wondering why that process, council's not, you're acting as a committee of the whole of council, so you're not in a position in this meeting to make decisions, just to recommend to yourselves at a regular meeting. I know you know that, but people watching might not.
Thank you. Would somebody like to make a recommendation or a motion that we recommend to council ourselves that we explore Municipal Insurance Association?
I'll make that recommendation. I'll let you do the wordsmithing.
Is there a second? Great. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. And just note, sorry, just for people in the public, we do have public input period at the end.
I'm not trying to input, but I cannot hear. And could the people that are speaking speak into the mic, please?
The mics have to be on,
Okay,
Councillor
I'll
Paulson.
second that recommendation.
Thank you. We will do that. Okay. So if nobody else has any questions, I do have one. First of all, you mentioned our current, as the budget sits right now, the average increase. The increase to the average home is 5.3%. Our budget document that we have in our package shows 5.9, which I was quite confused by because it was 5.2 at the last meeting and we didn't make any decisions that I thought would impact that. So it does show 5.9.
In the tax summary.
Yes, at the end.
Okay.
It's on page 24, Twyla. So if it's 5.3, that's great. I'm assuming it's 5.3, but I just want to make sure it's not.
And I'm
that
wondering
we're not
maybe if the
working
wrong
from
page may have
5.9.
been added. Yeah. Okay. Yes, it is 5.3, and that's my apology. I bet it could be just the
It could be an
consolidated.
old document.
the
It's
wrong-
had a lot of changes. Okay.
Yes. My apologies.
As long as we're working from 5.3. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So another question from me. The first item on that list of changes, the Capital 2020 Road and Sewer Water Projects, 4th Avenue, Bruce to Melrose, moved from sewer to operating. So
Correct.
why specifically did we move it from being financed from sewer fees?
The project itself, the scope of it, initially when discussed, we thought it was sewer related and it should have come out of the sewer fund. Later discussion with Public Works, they had labeled that project as operating and it needed to be moved back into the operating budget.
Could we understand maybe what the project is again? I know
Madam
we've
Mayor,
gone over all of
I
these,
think the
but
issue is that on further review, the project didn't fit the criteria to be using sewer funds for. So then it has to come from another source.
is it a sewer project though, or I mean, what is the?
It's a storm project.
Okay. Gas tax. So we've got some listed in the budget piece. We've got $80,000 in the capital plan. We've got $80,000 from operating, 125 from gas tax, and 125 from sewer operating.
That's correct. So that's where the balance of that project, that 80,000, needed to come from operating. That's the balance of that project that needed to go to storm and road construction.
Okay.
So the sewer portion of the funding covers the sewer portion of the project.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just not clear what was there, like why it was in sewer before that 80,000 and now it's being moved to general.
Because at the time, we thought that it was sewer related, that the portion that has now been moved away from there. And on further review, we realized we couldn't, that portion of the project just didn't fit the criteria for the sewer. So we just refined our review of that project.
And I think I don't have the prior budget before, so I'm assuming that there was none from general prior.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further questions on this portion? Okay, moving on. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
We have next spreadsheets summarizing questions from council members and staff responses. CAO?
Madam Mayor, so similar to our previous meetings, council has asked questions, staff are providing responses to those questions. And a number of those responses you'll see tell you that there's reports pending or on the agenda tonight. So I'll just read through them quickly. First one, vehicle replacement policy, when was it last reviewed? And there's a report coming up from Wayne Cheveldave on today's agenda to look into that more in detail. Next question, clarification of funding source for the whole natural rescue tools. And again, a report from the fire chief on today's agenda in more detail. Next question, an update regarding the clock tower project, including design detail. And we anticipate having a report for the regular meeting of council on February 10th, which is next Monday. Next question, council asked to see options to reduce the fire department budget to accommodate the purchase of the new self-contained breathing apparatus equipment. And as I recall, council said, let's look at the fire department budget first. And again, the fire chief has a report on this agenda. The next question, Industrial Heritage Society, we're asked to review for potential further other reductions in the proposed budget. I did speak today with Ken Rutherford, who's been working with council on that budget. And I had not reached out to Ken prior to ask him for that input. So he reached out to me today and he said they're having a board meeting this week and he hopes to have, they'll consider if there's options for a limited operational season and if that has budget impact, and he will let us know in time for our February 17th budget meeting, which is 2 Mondays from now. The next question, information regarding the status of the Enhanced Security Initiative Program. This program was initially funded in 2018 for $25,000. That money was spent in 2019, and the funds that were budgeted in 2019 were not spent, so those are available for us to spend this year. Also, we've updated the financial plan to include $25,000 in each year of this 5-year plan, and we put that funding under community policing, whereas before it was under bylaw. And I'll remind council that the community policing budget, the community policing funding in this 5-year plan comes from the Policing Reserve Fund. So no impact on direct taxation this year. The next question, what are the total costs for McLean Mill? There's a spreadsheet in your package. I'd like to show another document, if I can, that has, I think, yes, please, information that'll be more relevant to council's question. We think that council wanted to know what are the city expenditures totally in 2020. So we've compiled this spreadsheet. So recently council approved an operator agreement for the non-historic zone at McLean Mill, and that's $150,000 of the Chamber of Commerce. The draft budget includes $40,000 for anticipated city expenditures at McLean Mill, and as well, an addition of $40,000 to the city's contingency budget for unforeseen costs, because we anticipate there will be some unforeseens transitioning from one operator to the other this year. Going forward under capital, the capital budget includes $30,000 funding, and with that 30, we hope to we plan to leverage $90,000 in grant funds to complete $120,000 worth of work, but only 30 of that from the city. And the McLean Mill Dam project is brought forward again. It was, the budget we had last year was considerably lower than the tender prices that we received, so we budgeted $140,000 from gas taxes to be able to complete that project this year. And that's 170 total for capital and a total operating and capital of $400,000. Back to the questions.
Councillor Solda, did you have a question?
Yeah, I would like to go to the McLean's Mill. First of all, I have two questions, well, maybe more. ALR, have we contacted the ALR regarding McLean's Mill at all? Do we know what the
Madam
status?
Mayor, we talked about this at the last regular meeting, and I told you that I had been in touch with them, and council, I believe, directed to continue that conversation, and we would report back. I had another conversation last week with the Land Commission, and I see I missed a call today while I was in meeting with council. So yes, we're in contact with the ALC.
Okay, so nothing yet from them
Nothing to
otherwise?
report yet.
Okay, and the other question is, will the mill itself be running during this time? When it's
Thank you
taken
for that question. This budget does not envision operating the mill, no.
Okay, so where I'm going with that is regarding the dam. If the mill's not running, we don't really need the dam, because we do have a creek diversion that was done years back, cost us a lot of money. So I'm wondering why we need to go forward with the dam if we're not operating the mill.
Yep, another good question. The dam is a lot safer since we diverted the stream away from it, but the dam still has some issues that need to be addressed sooner or later. And the dam does hold back the log pond. There's two aspects to that. The necessity of the log pond. One, it's historical, so it's a significant asset historically to that site. The second issue is it's the water supply for the fire sprinkler system. So our obligation to Parks Canada is to preserve the heritage and to present the heritage. So maintaining it presents heritage, and maintaining the log pond also helps us prevent loss of the mills or any other structures to fire, which is, I would say, it's the biggest risk that facility faces. So that's the bit, so depending on your perspective, whether you value the heritage aspect or the protection of the historical asset, those are the two big reasons.
Okay, and one last question. In this budget that's presented in front of us, the insurance is paid for through the city, is that correct?
That's correct.
And how about hydro and all the other stuff like?
The operating agreement with McLean, or sorry, with the chamber, says that until such time as we can separate and meter out the utilities, the city will pay the utilities, and then after we get those metered out, that the chamber would pay those. So in 2020, we envision the city paying the utilities.
So is that, when we talk about the city's total expenses, that's not built into the $400,000, so?
It is.
If-
It's in the McLean Mill city
For-
expense, $40,000.
So with the insurance too?
The insurance, I believe, is part of the overall city insurance program, so we haven't broken that out. But to be fair, we don't break out insurance for facilities. We just pay an insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we continue.
Back to the questions.
Yes, please.
So there was a number of housekeeping items identified. Those have been addressed. You can see them there. The question about the clock tower project, that'll be addressed in next Monday's report. Again, another question about the whole material rescue tool replacement. It's been moved from 2020 to 2021, and the fire chief will speak more about that in a few minutes. And the last question regarding the 3rd Avenue project, is it possible to take a phased approach? And the response is the staff are actively working on this project. Our intention is to design and build it in the same year. So we are still designing, and we're looking for potential for phasing the work and the expenditures, as well as the potential for utilizing city resources for some of the components.
Okay. Follow-up questions to that? Councillor Corbeil?
Well, just on the Third Avenue project, I've heard lots about it. And I would hope that staff is looking at lots of options. The price for this project, I wasn't too terribly long ago, I thought it was 400 and then 500, and then we've seen the consultant's report that talked as 1.25 to 1.5, and I appreciate that, you know, that's not, if we were to use our own staff, that might be less. But I'd like to see a whole lot of options before we go ahead on this, because it's a major undertaking, it's a lot of money, and quite honestly, there's a lot of people in the community that question the value of it.
Councillor Solda?
And regarding the Third Avenue, again, we've had a lot of controversy on it. Some want it, some don't, as we all know. But I have a recommendation for two things, and this project is one of them. So do you want me to wait till the end for the two, or do you want me to do them separately?
No, I think you're
For
welcome to
future?
move forward anytime.
Okay. So thinking about it and writing about it at home, so I would like to, for this particular project, I would like to make a recommendation. I don't know if it's a motion, because you said we can't make motions.
You can make a recommendation.
So my recommendation would be that that council put half of the 1.3 into a contingency fund for the Uptown revitalization for budget year 2020, and add the other half for budget year 2021. And the reason for this is that there is a strike. We know that. And I don't want everything to evolve around strikes in Port Alberni, but this is a long-term strike, and it's affecting people with their homes and everything like this. And it's not just affecting the workers who are directly impacted by the strike, but it's also the local businesses and contractors that are hurting financially. And I've heard from contractors who are now going into their personal accounts and their MasterCards and Visas and paying their bills because they haven't been paid by the company. And I believe working with a contingency for all this will help bring down the taxes, because I believe it's $150,000 we bring down a point of a tax, so that could bring down a couple of percentages of the tax. So that's my recommendation.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
And nobody says that this is not a project that's not going to happen. It's just like, if you want to do something, you put it into a savings account till you get the money, and that's only for 2 years.
Sure. Would you suggest, I'm sorry, is there a seconder for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Would you suggest then that we push the Key to Key project that's currently scheduled for next year to 2020?
I have no
Two.
problem with that.
So then we would be looking at probably a 10% increase next year, roughly, like somewhere in that range. Pretty significant.
Well, I look at the 1.3.
if you don't want to push that one out.
And I'm okay with that, keeping it in, but I'm looking at, if you take the 1.3, you divide it in half, you still bring your taxes down, but there's another project that I'm interested in bringing down.
But we don't have 1.3 million in our budget for this project.
I
We
understand.
have 500,000.
Okay, so then we take half of that. However we want to do it, but I think we need to bring it down and put it into the kitty and build it.
Okay.
That's my recommendation.
Sure. So we might want to get a picture of what tax increase would look like next year if we're not going to be moving every project out a year or 2 years or 3 years. I'm sure council is aware we have $1.5 million in our budget for the Key to Key path next year. If we want to split that over 5 years, if we're looking at...
Well, Madam Mayor, sometimes we can't do it. Then we
Absolutely.
drop it,
Yeah,
and
for
we
sure.
move on with it and get what we can do
For sure.
done.
Absolutely. For sure. Okay. Okay. Comments? Councillor Haggard?
Comment. I think $500,000, I know it's a lot of money and I know it's difficult. Any tax increase is difficult. It doesn't matter what year it is. But if we don't start investing in ourselves, how can we expect developers to come into our community, invest in our community? We have to start moving forward, and this is one of those ways that we can do it. And $500,000, I don't think is unreasonable for a major project if it's gonna improve our livability in our community. It's gonna improve our uptown area, it's gonna make the businesses busier, it's gonna make it.
If we could make sure people who are in the audience, Jane, I understand you're not a fan of this project, but if you're going to laugh in the audience, that's very disruptive to our meeting. Thank you. We welcome you to be here with, input that might not align with all of ours, but please be respectful.
Yeah. And I think we've already asked the CAO to come back with options, and I think we should wait and before voting on this, see what those options are.
It's moved and seconded, so we do have to vote on it. CAO, could you comment on what putting the project or not funding it all could do to our grant opportunity? Because it's not $1.5 million, although that's what was in the report. There was a cover report that was not reported on that said we were not spending that and not budgeting for that and changing the scope of the project. It's $500,000 in our budget with $400,000 from a grant, leveraging that grant money.
That's correct, and we've identified some funds, I believe 400 from sewer and 400 from water, if we undertake sewer and water work. And as I said earlier, we're designing this project right now, so we don't know yet if we're gonna do water and sewer. So we put some contingency funds in there from those reserve funds. The grant that we're applying for, I believe is a maximum of $400,000, and I believe it's 60% funding. So we would need to be spending, our portion of the funds in order to get the grant. I don't believe, and it's off the top of my head, I don't believe we're eligible for a grant this year if we're going to build the project next year. So if council did want to defer the project to next year by splitting, if you wanted to split our $500,000 contribution this year into 2 years, then likely we're talking about building it next year, and then we would make a grant application next year, not this year. Does that make sense? And that's off the top of my head. There could be other aspects to this.
Sure. Councillor Corbeil.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Haggard that the CAO is going to come back with a bunch of options, and that would be the time to make the decision. I realize we have to vote on the recommendation, but I think waiting for another week to hear what the CAO has to offer would be the prudent way to go.
Thank you. Councillor Poon, did you have any comments? Sure. Councillor Paulson.
Well, I think like I say, we've got more information coming on the project, and I have different feelings on this. Our family had a business on 3rd Avenue for 33 years, and I have some strong thoughts about our community in general. If we don't move forward, where are we 5 or 10 years from now as a community if we don't take care of our infrastructure and kind of what we're doing? So I would like to wait for the follow-up reports, and there's some information that we've asked for that I think may make a difference here too.
Thank you. Councillor Washington.
It's already been said, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Solta.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to postpone my recommendation until, so I'll put everything on hold and then it'll still be on the table. And just so you know that I don't disagree with the upgrading. My family had a business on 3rd Avenue for many, many, many years before.
My family has never had a business on 3rd
So
Avenue.
there you go. If we want to throw in families and stuff like that, my family has. And so I know what 3rd Avenue used to be, and I know we need to move forward. This project has not just been recommended by this council. It's been done for a few years. We've been wanting to upgrade 3rd Avenue. And I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying let's do half. I know we're building cement things and getting ready to do something on 3rd Avenue. And I'm not saying not to. I'm just saying that there is a big strike. People are being affected. Companies are being affected. They want to bring the taxes down because some people are losing their homes. And I'm not saying not to do the project because I think it's a great project, although I hate the parallel parking because, what can I say about that? But it's okay. So
I can't parallel park either.
Yeah. So there you go. But the whole thing is, I'm just asking for, just to hold back so people can pay the taxes.
I think there are also, if council wants to, and at the end of our last budget meeting, I asked councillors to bring forward areas that they would like to look to reduce budget. Councillor Solda, if this is the one you're looking at, then that's, your right to do. But we should remember that, we have like a $30 million budget, and this might be the place to reduce, or there might be other places that we should be asking staff to look at reductions. And it's easy to focus in on what is in the capital, which is what we typically do because it's project by project. It's very easy. Within, a lot of the budget lines, it's not as easy to, look at a $2 million line item and have a clear understanding of what that represents. We don't have as much detail on that information. So if council is looking to make a reduction, then there's a lot more places to look than just the capital budget. City Clerk, is just withdrawing or postponing a motion okay in a committee of the whole?
It is a recommendation on the floor, so with the support of the individual, in this case, Councillor Solda, who made the motion, and the seconder, Councillor Corbeil, if they're fine to withdraw, that's satisfactory.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm just postponing it. I'm not actually withdrawing my recommendation.
Then there is a recommendation on the floor, and I would suggest then that you vote on that recommendation.
But if I postpone it, doesn't that end the conversation?
Do you mean refer or table? Or?
Table it. Okay, if that's easier to say, table it, yes.
So right now, there is a recommendation on the floor that adjustment be made. So I would suggest you vote on that recommendation, and then you could reintroduce it and ask that it be tabled until the next meeting. But I would suggest you just do that at the regular, like it's in there, so you can't really table a motion at a cow.
So basically what you're saying is to vote on it and then make that a motion at the next meeting.
Or withdraw it.
Or
and
withdraw and bring
whenever
it back.
You feel like
Correct.
Then I'll withdraw it and I will bring it back as a notice of motion that I have at the last meeting. I had a notice of motion and this was going to be the notice of motion.
Okay. So you're intending to bring it to our next regular council meeting then?
Or I'll talk with staff and we'll figure out the best place to bring it. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. Councillor Solda, did you have another, was your next motion relevant to this topic?
No.
Okay. Okay. Okay, our next item on the agenda is a staff report regarding the replacement of the self-contained breathing apparatus.
Mayor, so at the last committee of the whole, I was tasked with trying to find some money out of existing money so that we didn't have a impact to the taxation, and that's what I've presented here. So allocating the wildfire reserves towards self-contained breathing apparatus, deferring the purchase of the hydraulic rescue tools, which there was a note in the Q&A as well. So the hydraulic rescue tools was in operating budget. So deferring that, excuse me, deferring that to 2021. Also deferring the 2007 Dodge Dakota to 2022 and reallocating $14,857 from the IRF towards the replacement of the SCBAs. And then if we scroll down, and then further, just to kind of tie everything in a bow here, also then giving early approval to purchase the auto extrication tools, the hydraulic tools, in 2021 for the amount that was budgeted, and then allocating the monies that were in IRF, so $609,500, and then an additional 128,143. So that's to make up for the wildfire reserve funds, but it won't impact the 2020 budget. It'll impact the 2021 budget.
So you're asking for early approval for both of those purchases?
Correct. So the hydraulic rescue tools would then come, the intention is that engine one will be equipped with the new rescue tools. You'll note that 2021 is now a line item, or sorry, Engine 1 is now a line item in 2021 as opposed to 2020. If we were to press go tomorrow, we just wouldn't be able to take delivery at this point. There's just that long of a lag time for fire engine manufacturing. So because we're not going to take receipt of Engine 1 until 2021, we're able then to, we would need the early approvals so that we can instruct whoever the successful proponent is, but we won't actually have to pay them until 2021 when the engine is received.
Thank you. Are there questions from council? Councillor Haggard.
It's not really a question, but I'm finding a really difficult time with the fire department because I only get a little small piece of the picture. I need the big picture. What kind of equipment do you have? What year are they? When do you plan on replacing them? Because I feel like every year you need a fire truck. Well, I want to know what's coming up down the road because I feel like every year you need something. So, and by saying to me you need to replace one engine, well, I have no idea what that engine is. Do you have like 4 other engines, 10 other engines? I have no idea. So I need a bigger picture with a little bit more detail. Would that be possible?
Yeah, I guess right now it probably resides in the 5-year plan. The replacement schedule for fire engines is prescribed by the fire under survey. So engine 1 would get replaced in 2021. When the trucks turn 10 years of age, we push them into the second line spot. When they turn 20 years, they have to go into reserve as per the fire under survey. And then after their 29th year, they then don't count towards any insurance grading. So that's the point that they're retired. So we're keeping these fire engines for 30 years. The new employee the new firefighter that we just hired he'll retire before the new fire engine retires. So we're keeping these a long period of time. And then the aerials, so we have one ladder truck. It's due for replacement after 20 years. And we were able to get that extension on that for the additional 5. So that one's going to come due in 2022. So I can certainly, if sure, yes.
It's a bad string of years for fire trucks. CEO.
Madam Mayor, if I can jump in and support maybe here. Conceptually, council asked us to try to find the money to buy the SCBA, which were unplanned this year. And what the fire chief's done is said, look, we can push 3 projects out of, I believe 2 or 3, out of 2020 into 2021 and 2022. And we'll reallocate those funds now to buy the SCBA, and then we'll use essentially tax dollars in those future years. So there's not a reduction here, but there's a deferral of projects. I think you can see that. The question about better information around cycling equipment, I think that speaks to the early approval piece. So if you can split those out in your minds, do you accept moving these projects out to enable no taxation impact this year to purchase SCBA's? And if you do, then I think you can proceed with this motion or this recommendation. If you need more information on the early approval part, we don't have to do that. As much as the chief would like it on February 10th, and I agree with him, we could push that out to a subsequent meeting to give you enough time to see the documentation that supports the purchase and the life cycles of that equipment. As long as we get early approval, I'm looking at the fire chief, in a month or something, you can go ahead with the tender in time?
I mean, we're behind the 8 ball now, so again, if we were to order the engine tomorrow, we would expect to get it, depending on who the successful proponent was, it could be between 14 months or more. We do, the fire under survey tends to have some leniency if we've made the purchase, but we will be, so engine 1 will have turned 30 by the time the engine arrives now, if we were to press play on this now and get that early approval. Engine 2 will, for insurance purposes, be a reserve engine before we get this new truck to replace, to kind of shuffle all the trucks along. So I mean, the sooner the better, I would say, but, yeah, it's at the will of council, so.
Thank you. And that was going to be my recommendation because I know there's more questions about the fire truck. As there are every year, we have to purchase a fire truck. You know, it's not that just this one. We went through the same thing. I think we ended up pushing out the ladder truck, but we went through the same thing talking about the ladder truck. They're huge purchases, and I think we have to make sure that council is really comfortable with those purchases before moving forward. Where I do see consensus around council is around the breathing apparatus. I think that I don't think there's a single person here who doesn't understand the need to replace that breathing apparatus as soon as possible. So I'm happy to see the changes that you have made to the budget to be able to accommodate that this year. I would certainly be comfortable moving forward with that first portion and changing the budget, or I think it's already changed, and then working closer to get toward the early approval on the truck and the other pieces.
Okay.
Are there, Councillor Corbeil?
What prevents us from pushing the ladder truck out to 30 years?
Well, I would say that, and of course I wasn't here when the ladder truck was pushed from 20 years to 25 years, but that would be the limit that the fire under survey would allow that piece of equipment to be pushed out. As it turns out, right now, we're starting to experience some issues with ladder 2, just things that come with age. So we've had mechanics down there working on ladder 2 for the last 3 weeks, probably 3 times a week with starting issues. So that's the reason why fire under survey times these trucks out, despite the fact that we keep them in excellent condition. They just start to become more and more unreliable, and we're experiencing that right now with ladder 2.
And they couldn't be rebuilt. Like the last de Havilland Beaver was built in 1950 something, and they're still flying back and forth. I'd love to push that fire underwriter survey team a little bit, because it just seems ridiculous in some cases.
Yeah, I think that we pushed them already in order to get that 25, the 5-year extension to bring us to 25, and I don't believe that we would be successful in getting a further extension. Of course, the ladders is now a 2022 line item in the budget, so there is some time to consider that and ask those questions. But yeah,
Councillor Solda.
Yeah, I like the idea of purchasing the breathing apparatus, and the biggest thing is I'm big on warranty, and I love the warranty on it. So yeah, so I'm really for it, and I agree with Councillor Corbeil about waiting, you know, and get more life out of the fire trucks and stuff like that. So it's really hard for me on that, but I understand, and so I just wanted to bring that up.
yeah, and of course we need these things to be reliable, and if you think about it, I mean, we are retiring these trucks at 30 years for the fire engines. So I would argue that is a pretty healthy lifespan for a truck that works pretty hard.
Thank you. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Breathing apparatuses, we're going with brand S.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay.
brand S, yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. And second question, where do old fire trucks go to die?
Well, I believe if you're heading into Nanaimo, you'll see one on the bank there.
Councillor Poon.
Sorry, just out of curiosity, has the fire truck ever broken down on the way to a fire in our fleet?
It's a good question, and I've only got a 1-year snapshot. We haven't had any of the fire engines break down en route, and yeah, I wouldn't know, but.
Thank you. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. CAO, can you just confirm that what's presented in the recommendations is already in our budget?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. I know we're presuming by changing the budget already, the draft budget, but there was, as you can see, there's so many complications there. We thought not changing it would leave you with a budget that was hard to see the impact this would have. So we made the decision to make the changes in the draft.
Thank you. Okay. And lastly, we have a report from the Acting Director of Finance and the Mechanical Services Superintendent regarding the city's vehicle equipment replacement process and the city's equipment replacement reserve fund. Welcome.
So we've done the report that you have in front of you as a brief summary of how the equipment replacement reserve works, its workings, on the criteria of what is used to suggest replacement. We've also looked at the history and projections of the fund. So I just have a few notes. If you'd like to talk on criteria, we do have Mr. Shoveldave here that can answer any of those particular questions. Also, we did mention a brief history on the report itself of our fund targets at being 33%, and we have had some transactions gone through the fund over the previous years from 2002 to 2013. And that's reduced our target funds. So we've explained in here where our fund is to date, and our target as of 2031, our target is the 6.8 million or 33% of replacement costs. So currently, we've had some transactions. We've dipped into the fund. So we are sitting about 1.35 million short of the target as of today. So when we look at our projections and what we are putting into the fund on a yearly basis, we are projecting a shortfall coming 2031. However, 2031 is quite far into the future. We do have a graph at the end of the report as well that you can also see that notes that we do a slight dip. I'll wait till she gets it up here. So it looks like as we're going along, we enter our current year. And could you just slide down just a little bit so we can see the years? Perfect. So you see in 2021, 2022, we're taking those big dips when we're doing our investing in transportation. And you'll see a spike in our projection. So it looks like we're trending and we're putting enough into the fund. And then we're dipping as over the next few years as we're investing in those transport vehicles that are coming up. And as we can move along, we can see it's trending up again after we get past that dip. So we are heading in the right direction. We have noted in here that you could look at doing a 2% increase or $18,000 per year. That would get you back on track. That doesn't necessarily have to be done within this financial plan. It's just for your information. We'll also, as we move on, we'll be projecting further out to 2040, 2060 in this as well. So you'll see it bounce back. So that's just for your knowledge.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions here? CAO.
Madam Mayor, Wayne Shoveldave is here, and Wayne is our soon to retire superintendent of fleet maintenance. And Wayne is the guru in terms of our replacement of vehicles. And I would strongly encourage council to ask questions of Wayne about the criteria we use, the rationale we take to vehicle replacement. This is a perfect opportunity for you to ask him questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for Wayne? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do we have a vehicle replacement policy, or is it just we need a new one?
Yes, we do. We have a policy in place, and there is a criteria, I think was in the report on the process that we do. So I'm just going to give a brief outline of what the criteria is. Vehicles and equipment included in the IRF are initially scheduled for replacement based on the assumed life. The vehicle is not automatically replaced at the estimated life age. Following the criteria is used in most are kept for longer than the original plan. So then the criteria, what we do is we take each vehicle in probably the year prior to the replacement, and we start going over it, and we include the mileage and the hours that use accrued for it. The vehicle condition, we go over. The dependability of the unit, as what Mike was further saying about the fire trucks. The cost of annual maintenance is all taken into consideration. Upcoming major repairs. So there's we're looking to see if anything's coming up, what's happening with that vehicle, and so that's all taken into consideration as well. And also the parts availability, whether we still get them or not, and of course the cost and the prices of where it's going with that. Also declining trade-in values as well. So in some cases we do offer trades in the tender process. It's up to us whether we do trade them in. If we feel that the value is not there, we'll hang on to it and we'll put them up for sale to see if we can get a retail value from a sale for those. We also have a procedure where there's 5 categories that the vehicles fall under. We have light vehicles, which include cars, pickup trucks, vans, some utility trucks as well, small ones. And those are based on 13-year lifespans, assumed lifespans, okay? Next, we have medium-duty vehicles, and they include service body trucks, whether they're 1 tons, and also 5500 series vehicles as well. And those, we put and there's an assumed value life expectancy of 12 years on those. Heavy-duty vehicles, considered tandem axle dump trucks, hydrovac truck, asphalt repair truck that we have, larger ticket items. We have them at 10 years. And medium duty equipment, backhoes, tractors, and also some mowers for cutting the grass and everything else. We have those set at 10 years as well. We have some heavy duty equipment, which is the larger loaders and the graders. Life expectancies that we have that was set at 20 years. Okay. And then the favorite one in everybody's mind is the garbage trucks. And we have those set between 6 to 8 years. And it's a minimum 6 years. And we can go into that a little bit later on those ones. So basically, I'll just give you an example. We have a couple of single axle dump trucks right now that are 1998, 1999. They're running 20, 21, 22 years. They're still fine. They're not costing us a lot of money to operate. The criteria is still there, so we'll carry them on for another year. But as soon as we push a vehicle ahead, we have to evaluate it again the following year. Because then that way it doesn't get caught up, and if it's due, if something's happening to it, whereas then we might need to replace it the following year. We can keep pushing them forward until we get to the point. There's like a crystal ball. We got to try to figure out, make sure if nothing major is coming up to cause any damage or any safety concerns and everything else before we decide to come to you to say we need this replaced. So every vehicle is assessed the year prior to, usually the fall of budget time. So what happens, like the budget for 2020, we were already looking at them at the beginning of summer of 2019. Seriously looking at it and looking at all the concerns. Like another example is we have the backhoe coming up for 2020 budget. That one there is almost 13 years old. It was normally a 10-year lifespan, life expectancy. So we kept pushing it because it was still operating properly. At that time, it wasn't costing us a lot of money, and so now we've pushed it almost 2 extra years. This is going to be a 3rd year, but over the last half of last year, it's creating a lot of issues that we're finding, and now it's time to do the replacement. So that's why we put it in the budget. It's starting to spend more time in the shop than it's actually being out on the road working. It's time to get rid of that one. Okay. We also have a tandem axle dump trucks as well, and there's one there that the lifespan with their life expectancy was up in 2017. Okay, so now we've already pushed that one ahead a couple of years. So we've been looking at that one every year, and we're going to go another year with it. So we'll see what happens this year to whether or not we're going to end up replacing it for next year, and see if everything falls in the criteria and how well it's doing, if it's not costing us a lot, and no major breakdowns that we foresee so far. But like I say, we'll know farther ahead in the year as we get going. So that's basically how we judge our equipment. We bring everyone, we're looking at them all. All of them are there, then and so we have to look at them, whether we're doing our servicing, inspections during the year. My team looks at it constantly. Anytime the vehicle's in the shop, they're always going through it with a fine-tooth comb, if we got the time for it. So basically, the equipment summary, in the engineering department, we're running 62 vehicles that are in the EAR fund. That's just the vehicles. And the other equipment side of it, we're running 64 pieces of other equipment, which could consist of sanders, plows, hydraulic packs, all your little bit smaller stuff, but that is all in the EAR fund. So we're running over 100 pieces of equipment in the EAR fund. And so, like I say, you'll see in the 2021 projections, a lot of equipment is now piling up. Well, a lot of those were being pushed ahead. But a lot of those ones on those pages, because we're dealing with a 5-year budget, a lot of those equipment are going to keep getting pushed ahead, because some of them may not need replacing, but we won't know until the year prior. So you'll see that you'll see in the form there of how much. There's probably 10 or 12 pieces in there. Might only end up replacing 3 of them on that list in that 5-year plan. 8 for each year as you go ahead. That's how it works.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
We will miss you when you retire. Are there questions? Councillor Poon.
Okay, I have a few questions. What percentage of the fleet exceeds the assumed replacement date?
Exceeds the
Yeah.
I would probably say we push probably 95% of it.
I guess. Okay, and
Because
and-
not all of it's being
Yeah.
not all of it's being replaced. Mind you, there has been a couple of years where we've asked for early replacements,
Okay.
because it depends on what the job and that vehicle is being acted for. And we have some vehicles that are constantly out in the watershed, so they're on the gravel roads 90% of its life.
Okay.
So those will be replaced earlier.
And what percentage of the maintenance is done in-house?
There again, I'd probably say 95% of it. The only thing that we don't do is air conditioning work.
Okay.
We don't do enough of it to house all the expensive equipment to do it.
And what is currently the oldest vehicle in the fleet?
That would be probably one of the graders, 1988.
Oh, good year.
Well, I'm glad you made it last.
Thank you. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can sympathize you when it comes to parts. Most truck dealerships will only carry 10 years. When you talk about your single axle dump trucks, I know GM's just a little more kinder than the rest of it, and there are quite a few of them out there. So hopefully those parts will keep coming out. Just a quick comment. In councils of past, when we came to vehicle replacements and stuff, you were kind enough to show us the vehicle, either bring them up here or take us down to City Works. I know for the new council, it would probably be very beneficial if you put that in your notes for next year if you're going to retire on us, just so that they can actually see what, like when we crawled inside the insides of the garbage trucks and found there was nothing to weld to anymore, or the single act, the dump trucks and stuff like that. It's very beneficial for us to see that physically. So if you could make it, not retire or make a note, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
I want to wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you.
And my experience, sitting in this chair for the last 6 years is Mr. Cheveldave has been extremely astute with regards to the vehicles. And actually, through council request, you've actually pushed some vehicles out that needed replacing at the time. But and thank you for doing that. You know how difficult the budget process is. And I think you mentioned one word, and that's safety. And that's really the number one paramount thing, and I think that goes back to our breathing apparatus for the fire department as well.
Yeah.
It's just one area that you cannot scrimp on, but thank you for your years of service, Wayne, and you're going to be dearly missed.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Solda.
Oh, Wayne, you're going to miss this. I have a quick, and I've asked many questions in the past about vehicles and ages because, you know, to me, a vehicle is a vehicle as long as it works. And I understand if the repair bills get to be a lot more, then we need to look at changing things. But I have a question. Technology is changing rapidly on vehicles. And of course, I'm just kind of curious to know about the education because we're getting into the electrical vehicles and different things, the hybrid and stuff. So I'm just kind of curious to know, how do we deal with that? Because do we have the expertise at the works yard, and what do you do about it?
Yes, the team that we have now put together is pretty well experienced. The last mechanic that we got is dealership experience, so they get most of the training from all the manufactured trucks with all the new technology, and that's what he's bringing to us with, and which is great because you can't just, the training's not out there for the mechanics as what people may think it is. If you're working at a dealership, the dealership pays for all that training, and at their facilities. Right now, a lot of it, the universities and the colleges aren't offering a lot of that stuff to the private sector. Only if they're going to school to get that training itself. It's an issue. It's a problem that we're running into. We have a lot of it's computer based. Now it's laptops and computers you're taking inside the trucks to diagnose. We have the software. We purchased the software through a couple of different places, and so we have that technology in the shop. We have the mechanics that now are using that, and one excellent guy that we have in there right now, and he's training up all our staff here as we speak, and that's how we get all our experience guys, is from all the people that are from outside coming in right now, the mechanics. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for the report, both of you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Council, I think that is, we have correspondence to receive. But I think we could, Council could start any suggested changes that we want to make at this point, or questions that we have. I know Councillor Corbeil had emailed some questions around reserve funds, and the CAO provided a great response, but it's not included in our package. And I can't pull it up because I don't have a computer today. I feel very challenged without a computer. Thank you. I have drawn paper. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So it was summarized here, what's in some of our reserve funds.
Madam Mayor, if you give us a moment, I'll try to get that up on the screen.
Sure, that would be great. And my question is really around what some of these reserve funds are used for. Specifically, starting with the Parks and Rec Capital Reserve Fund that has 2.3 million in it. And if I am reading the correct section of the budget, I believe I am, Parks, Recreation, and Heritage, so there's a line that says transfers to capital funds. There's a Parks Fund as well as a Parks, Recreation, and Heritage Fund. I'm assuming the Parks and Rec Capital Fund is the Parks, Recreation, and Heritage line with $250,000 going into it. I can give you the line.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Item.
Is that for me or for Rosalind?
Nobody's got computers working today. Thank you. So could we get a general answer first for what the Parks and Recreation Capital Fund is used for? So it says Parks and Recreation revenues are transferred to this reserve fund annually.
So
When are they transferred out?
Madam Mayor, I don't know if we're able to answer that question on the fly.
Okay.
So
It just seems like a large fund that I'm curious if we have expenses allocated to it, or if there's certain things that are budgeted to replace.
It's a reserve fund, so I would think that nothing would come out of there unless council approved it.
but that's not really my question. My question is, when would something be taken out of there, or are we building up an endless fund that we're contributing significant amounts of money from general taxation, so tax increases for, and we don't know what it's for?
And my recollection, and again, I would want to take some time and come back with a more informed answer, but my recollection is that reserve fund is for capital replacements without having to impact taxes in those years. And certainly that fund has been bandied around as the fund where the new aquatic center would come from if the city replaced it. So, and you'll see there's, what was there, $2 million in that range there?
2.3 million, it says,
2.3 million, yeah, that's right.
So my question is going to be, if we have a number of Parks and Rec projects that are capital projects that we're funding from general taxation, like the Penny Lane Bridge replacement, that's a $25,000 capital project. It's not a huge amount of money, but $25,000 is still significant. Could that be funded through the Parks and Recreation Capital Fund? We've got smaller projects, the Echo Park Fieldhouse Furnace number 2, $6,600. Echo Park Fieldhouse security cameras, $15,000. And multiplex small equipment, $19,640. I'm wondering if those are the types of things that could be funded through that reserve.
They could, Madam Mayor, if council wanted that. I would caution, as you recall from my email, that a healthy organization needs healthy reserve funds. And if we were to draw that reserve fund down for those kinds of routine, if you like, maintenance, we wouldn't have the ability to leverage grant applications or grant opportunities. That's a significant one there. We would find ourselves in a few years having diminished reserves and still facing the same issues with aging infrastructure. So I would caution council against making a decision like that without a chance for us to bring you more information. And I apologize, we're just not ready to answer that question.
That's fine. I didn't ask it to you in advance tonight. So it just seems that some of these projects are capital projects. And if we're building up a multi-million-dollar reserve fund without necessarily an intended purpose, some of these smaller projects could be funded through it.
So if you'll give us a chance to bring you what the intended purpose for that fund was.
Sure.
We can do that, I think, by next Monday.
And I think we're transferring $250,000 into it this year additionally. So that's much more than the value of those projects even. The Capital Works Reserve Fund, $1 million, some may be allocated in 2020 draft budget. Generally, capital works projects, but I'm just wondering if these funds have specific projects allocated to them, or and how are the amounts the contributions that we're making each year from taxation, how are those amounts determined? So why do we contribute $100,000 versus $250,000 in a year?
Again, Madam Mayor, we can bring you those answers. Without having some money in these reserve funds, when a grant opportunity comes up and we don't have matching funds, we're not able to, unless we borrow, we're not able to be eligible for those grants. So it's important to have some capacity in these funds. And I'd like to caution you, Madam Mayor, this is an email I sent to Councillor Corbeil emailed me Sunday, asked me for some information on reserve funds. I took it to me and he wanted to know more about how they worked, so I sent an email to all of you.
You didn't have to put it up on the screen.
No, true enough. I never intended this, and I pulled the numbers out of 2019 spreadsheets, so I never intended this to be the basis for budget decisions.
Sure. So we do usually get these reserve sheets included in our budget, and we didn't get them this year. So
okay.
I think that's probably where the questions are stemming from. It doesn't necessarily tell us every year what the intended purpose is, but it does show us a bit more clearly transfers in and expected transfers out. So I would imagine those sheets are available. It might be helpful just to have those at our next budget meeting to see more clearly what we're transferring in and what we're transferring out regularly. But I think my bigger question is, are we just building up reserves for the sake of building up reserves so that we can go after big projects that we're not necessarily sure today what they are? Or is it like the Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund where every dollar in there is allocated to something, and when we draw, we're drawing down a project that we then can't do?
Yeah, no, it's not. To my awareness, these funds are generally not like Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund where portions are allotted to specific items. I'll tell you, Council, I would like to see more money in some of these funds. So land sale reserve, for example. I'd like us to be more strategic in the purchase of lands, and we generally don't have the money to buy lands as they come available. So it would be to our advantage to have more money in reserves.
And if we are worried about taxation, I think there's small draws we could make from some of these reserves if they don't have specific intended purposes today. So the things that I'm considering, projects that I recognize we need to do, but looking at could we fund these through some of these reserve funds, would be the 10th Avenue Roger Street traffic signal controller, $31,000. I'm wondering if that could be funded from the Capital Works Reserve Fund, the Penny Lane Bridge, $25,000, and then the furnace replacement and the security camera replacement through the Parks and Rec Reserve Fund. Those are small projects, but could have more than a percentage increase on our budget, or more than a percentage decrease on our budget increase. So if we could look at those specific projects for our next budget meeting, and I could email them instead of rambling them off quickly. Council, I'd also like to recommend that we move the City Works facility relocation plan from 2020 to 2021. I recognize that it's work that we need to do, but I think in terms of all of the priorities we have this year, it could be put off until next year and still stay within our 5-year plan.
I'll second that.
Okay. And my intent, so that is funded through gas tax, but we have lots of other things that could be funded through those gas tax dollars. So that could drop our budget increase down $50,000. Any conversation on that?
No.
Councillor Corbiel?
Well, I totally agree with you, but a question comes to mind. There's an emergency planning committee that I don't know if they've ever met, at least not since I've been around. And that report talked about a lot more than just, moving the yard. It talked about, potential issues, and I wonder if, I don't even know whose call it is, but maybe that emergency planning committee should get together and review that report. And there's some things that could be done, I think, in the short term that could, if we had a tsunami tomorrow, probably, moving the fuel possibly or something to that effect might be a wise move. So.
Yeah, some smaller changes that could be actioned quickly. Councillor Solda?
So just to go with what Councillor Corbeil has been saying regarding the emergency planning, they haven't met. And the second part is that I mentioned to our CAO about emergency planning normally has grants and stuff like this to help with emergency planning, and I think you were going to check on that at one point, so there might be some money there, some opportunities there. The 2.3 million on the Parks Reserve, I'm just kind of curious if some of it was earmarked for the new pool, if we had to have money in there in case the grant opportunities came up and there was something there, so from the past, and I'm just maybe check that too, because I think there's some opportunities. And also going off on your, let's take some money out, on the sign for the $150,000 for the Welcome to Port Alberni. Love the idea.
Don't say sign, it's not one sign.
Okay. And the old sign I could see, or that particular sign that's up there from the Cherry Creek director when it was put up, could go to the West Coast side, right? So there's a way to move it, but there's a lot of, we could move that and we could put half in a contingency for it, and then for the other half till we find out how much this is going to cost, because I think the 150 we could do a little cheaper. Maybe there's something out there. So if we put half away, at least we have half. That would help mitigate some of the taxes. That was another idea. And also regarding our old sign, the big one that was in front of the chamber, a lot of people have been asking about that. So we need to look, I know it's not in the budget, but there's something with that, and we need to, chamber or somebody needs to move on with that.
There was a cost given to us a couple years ago to, I know that sign has been refurbished now. There's a sign to have an engineer give us the plans to put it back up, and it was like $30,000 or something to get the old sign put up. So, but that could have been to do with where it was going to be put. So definitely something that could be looked into as well.
Into the future. So anyways, the $150,000, I'd like to see us take half of it and put it in to a contingency fund until we find out how much something's gonna cost, because we're putting it away right now. We're not gonna be doing the sign right away.
Are you making a motion? You can't make a motion. I have
You've
a
got
motion on the floor.
And I'll do that afterwards.
You can make a motion after me.
Thank you.
Okay, any more comments on Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know the CAO wants to keep money in the land sale reserve, but is there any update on the 650 we earmarked for the Arrowview Hotel demolition?
Madam Mayor, nothing more than what everybody's seen is that building's coming down. So the more that it comes down, the less liability for us. So I think we had $650,000 earmarked for that. Hopeful that our expenditures will be less, maybe even zero would be nice. Yeah,
We're hopeful that there'll be zero, for sure.
we're hopeful.
Thank you. Okay, so on the motion to move the capital works relocation plans to 2021, all in favor? Carried. And yeah, and then we'll go to Councillor Solda. Councillor Washington? Sorry, Paulson? Who are you?
We're about the same age. Just a quick comment on the Parks and Rec capital. Several years ago, Parks and Recreation instituted a 10% surcharge on all admissions, and certainly originally that fund was intended for furnaces or whatever, but the conversation around the pool came up and said, let's start socking away some money, and we know the pool's coming to the end of its life, and whether we do or don't replace it, that's another discussion. But that's kind of what that's about. And I want to comment on the police operating reserve, and it's something that we've built up in light of, if there's a major investigation, like a murder investigation in a community, those investigations are over and above your regular policing budget. It's almost like an insurance policy. And it's not unusual for a murder investigation to be anywhere around $1.5 to $2 million on additional manpower and costing. So we shot for $1 million, and we actually put $1 million in reserve in that one. And through the officer in charge reporting, he really didn't think that would cover if we had something major happen. So that's kind of the philosophy around that one as well. I just wanted to comment on that, so thank you.
Councillor Solda?
Oh, okay, sorry. I did go. Okay, Madam Mayor, I move that, or I recommend that the Port Alberni sign, we put half of the 150 into a contingency fund, welcome sign for the budget year 2020, and add the other half for the budget year 2021.
Is there a seconder? Okay, I'll second. Okay, Councillor Poon?
I don't really understand the motion
Okay, do you want me to
Go ahead.
clarify it? Okay, so
or the recommendation,
if,
sorry.
if the sign is $150,000, we're just, that's what's in the budget, right?
Not one sign.
Signs. How many, I have no idea.
Well, we don't know yet. It's a placeholder number, but we're not talking about one sign for $150,000. So what's in our strategic plan is Welcome to Port Alberni sign along with wayfinding signage for the community. $150,000 would not be the cost of one sign.
So it's a signage system throughout town then?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I see.
And in the past, when we changed all the signs, there was grants and opportunities. So we need to have the money there to have matching grants too. So if you take $50,000, you put it in a contingency fund for this year, you're knocking $50,000 off this budget, but next year you can.
Are you talking about 30,000, you said?
No, it's $150,000.
But you said you're putting away 30,000?
50,000.
Oh, 50, okay.
You put it in
I thought you
earmarked.
just said 30 though.
I thought you said half,
Half.
Oh, half?
but that's 75.
Okay. Yes, so there you go, without a calculator. So you take 75 and the 75.
Where's our director of finance when we need her to tell us
That's why
what half
she's
of
got the
150 is?
So anyways, I just believe that if you put half and half, you're still knocking some percentages off the budget, right? We're not ready for this, all these signs and everything at the moment. So let's just put half away, put the other half in the next year's budget.
Council, is there any strong opposition to doing this part of the project in two phases, potentially? Councillor Haggard?
Again, I thought we were waiting for a report on possible options for this sign, so I'd like to see the report before we make a decision.
Okay, yep. Councillor Poon?
I think the problem with if you don't have a complete signage system, you just add more confusion to the wayfinding within our city.
I think that's a good point. I do see this potentially as a project that could be phased over 2 years. So I wouldn't say let's not do anything this year and let's, do it next year, because we are talking about multiple signs that, could be designed and built over time. I could see taking $75,000 this year and getting started. Maybe we put up our Welcome to Port Alberni sign, and we determine what the style of the wayfinding signage that's going to continue is, and then do all of the, we do the plans for it and we have them built next year. Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe it was Mr. Smith who did present council of the past with a signage system that he had designed and pegged out. So, I mean, we don't have to start square one. If we could find that report and update the pricing, that might give you a little clearer vision of how much money it's going to cost.
Okay. Councillor Poon?
Thank you. Well, yeah, let's go with 75,000, and who knows? Maybe that's all it'll cost.
And there's grants out there. There's opportunities.
For sure. Okay. Okay. All right. So we have a motion to put $75,000 in this year's budget and $75,000 in 2021's budget for signage. Moved and seconded. Any further conversation on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed?
I'm voting no because I don't feel I have the information to vote yes or no until we see a report on cost and options for the sign.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Paulson.
It's kind of going off the beaten track here, but, and I don't need this answer right now. But looking at line item 14560, and it's probably something that this old mind just doesn't remember. We have a 313% increase in that economic development figure for 2020, from 126 to 521. I'm just kind of, there must be a special project that.
I think that was flow through of grants.
What was it?
Grants.
Oh, so that's
That was
an,
a
that's,
question that was answered at
Last meeting.
so that's an
Yeah.
in and out.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Just going through it again today and it just, what's that?
It's hard to remember.
Well, you know, I'm gonna be too sure.
Absolutely. Okay, council, is there any other direction at this point we would like to give, or information we'd like to ask staff for to prepare for our next meeting? Thank you, Councillor Solda.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I gave you a copy.
Thank you. I like to read it well.
I figured that.
Well, you say it.
I have a recommendation. I would like staff to put together a report that outlines our total debt for borrowing and which projects the debt was incurred. That staff also outlines the methods that the debt gets repaid by all property owners, be it through the mill rate for taxation based on land and improvements, or use fees based on how much is used on a particular property, including when the debt maturity date. What is the date and what is the debt per capita and household? So
that's under.
they have a copy of it.
Sure.
And I have a copy for all our council if they really want to read it, because it was a long-winded one.
And is that a notice of motion?
Yes.
For our next regular meeting of council?
Sure. You have that copy?
Okay, so that will be written on the agenda for our next regular meeting of council. Thank you. Okay, any further questions or direction? Councillor Solda?
Sorry.
That's fine.
One more thing. We've had a lot of people respond about if they could ask questions on the internet. There's people at home that cannot come to a council meeting. Are we going to give them that opportunity? Maybe on the 17th, I think we are meeting next regarding the budget.
So I think what we had said is we wanted to get the budget to a point where we were more comfortable with it, and then ask for input from the public, but it's at the discretion of council. So if we would like to make our next budget meeting a public input session and then make our final changes, we can do that.
I have no problem with that, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Council?
February 18th.
Councillor Poon?
Yes, if it was not the next meeting on the 17th, would there be other opportunities that we can invite the public for input?
I think there's lots of opportunities. We're ahead of the timeline with our budget by far. So there's no shortage of time to ask for input, but I think we have a meeting scheduled already for the 18th, so we could make it that meeting. See no opposition from our our manager of communications or director of finance. Okay. For our meeting we have scheduled? Okay.
Yeah, I have to attend some UBCM meetings, so.
Okay.
Do we have a quorum? Yeah, we have a
We
quorum.
have 5, but we might want to reconsider the public input period for a
We can do
night when
that.
all of council could be there.
Maybe staff could pick the date and
Yep.
come back to us.
For sure. CAO?
Madam Mayor, is council envisioning what we refer to as an e-town hall, where in real time we take input from various platforms on social media and present those questions to council? Or are you envisioning a questionnaire or a survey? Have you thought about what it is how you
I
want
think
to
we're
engage?
looking just for an opportunity for the public to be able to come, and rather than sitting for 2 hours through our council meeting and asking questions briefly at the end, a meeting that's more focused around people being able to ask questions.
In real time, not sending them in ahead of time?
Yeah, in real time.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we can necessarily answer all of them in real time, but questions in real time, in person and electronically.
And we have done that in the past, Madam Mayor.
We did
So
it a couple years
worked.
ago.
Yep.
Okay. So staff will work on a date for that we're all hopefully able to attend.
So, Madam Mayor, our next scheduled date is February 18th for a committee of the whole meeting. Is that not, you want that not to be the
Well, we
engagement?
have 2 councillors that aren't able to attend that date, so
I
we might
understand
want to consider rebooking. That's a Tuesday. We might want to consider scheduling it for the Wednesday instead and seeing if everyone could be here, or finding an alternative date that we could be.
19th works for me.
We'll work on that.
That 19th doesn't work for me.
Okay, so we'll work, we don't have to set
Okay.
that time today. We'll work on scheduling that and post it ahead of time. Okay, any further direction or questions from council? Okay. So we have correspondence. Item 1 is an email dated January 22nd from Don Dunbar requesting clarification around costs associated with the provision of recreational services and contributions on the part of residents and non-residents or residents of the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District. We have second an email from Peter Finch dated January 29th and January 30th, commenting on employee wages and seeking clarification on the city's annual percentage increase or proposed projects. And item 3 from Janine Dame, an email dated January 29th requesting council consider allocating monies in the financial plan to address invasive plants, particularly knotweed. Would somebody like to move receipt of these first?
So moved.
Is there a seconder? Okay, and are there any comments or questions on any of these letters? Councillor Corfield.
Well, a couple. The first one talks about essentially how the regional district pays towards Parks and Rec, and the writer asks, how was that determined? And I guess he goes on to wonder, is there a some sort of format to see increases, I guess, as populations grow? And I'm kind of curious too. I know we've talked about that before. There seems to be, when I did the math, I determined probably somebody many years ago came up with, I think it was $11 per person is probably how they determined it. And then it has never changed, I guess, from whatever year. I don't even know the history about how that came about. But I'd be curious to know the answer to that as well.
Councillor Paulson.
I'll give a bit of an answer to Councillor Corbeil in a second. The third letter from Janine Dame, I wonder if maybe Mr. Goodrow could drop us a quick report on the general policy within Parks and Recreation for dealing with that.
Yeah.
And
I was hoping that we could actually just ask Director Thorpe, because I think she's right there. I think she's back there. Even just briefly, if this is something, because it's referencing knotweed specifically, and I know Janine has brought this forward before, so I'm wondering if this is something that we are currently aware of and working on, and you know, or if there's needs for us to be working on it and what that would look like. And you don't have to fully provide a report today, but generalized answer.
Madam Mayor, yes, staff are aware and have been working to a degree with community on this. I'd be happy to pull a report together for council's review, a more fulsome answer for you.
I think that would be great, even if it was just, you know, don't need to spend a ton of time on it, but just to get an understanding of the background. And the email requests funds in the budget for it, and I think that, I mean, we obviously don't have funds specifically in the budget for this year, but if there is a need for funds, and this is an issue that we need to be looking at, then it would just be nice to have that captured in a number or in, yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
can I just respond?
Absolutely.
Councillor Corbeil, with regards to the first letter there, just in 2001, when the multiplex opened, there's a great discussion in 2001 about the regional district paying a fair share of parks and recreation facilities. There was a period of years where they introduced a resident, non-resident fee. So the non-residents were charged a fee over and above. What that turned out to be is it was more expensive for our staff to administer that particular policy than we were gaining in revenue. I don't know what went on around the board table with the regional district, but there was an agreement probably around 2005 or 6 where there was a formula developed for each one of the regional districts based on population per head. I realize it's not the same as the city residents. And of course, the ugly head that gets reared there is in the regional district, they accuse us of wanting to form a regional municipality. And that's not what this was all about, but that's just a rough history of that checkered past of that regional district input.
For sure. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments on these letters? Okay. It's moved and seconded to receive the correspondence. All in favor? Carried. And that brings us to public input period, an opportunity for members of the public who have sat so patiently through this long meeting to come forward and ask questions or provide input on our budget. And we will take we will hope everybody will have an opportunity to speak once. And if you could just come forward when you're called on and state your name and address so we can record it for the record, that would be great. And you're welcome to come forward first.
This is going to be a hit and run. I'm Pete Millick, and I've lived at 3622 15th Avenue for the last 53 years, so I think I've paid my share of taxes. And I heard the mayor say earlier today that tonight that 5.3 was coming down, that was good enough. But in my occupation, which is retired, and there's a lot of homeowners in Port Alberni are retired and they're not getting raises, and I'd like to see the taxes being held a little bit closer. And some of the questions I have is with the working agreement the fire department has with Cherry Creek, Beaver Creek, and Sprout Lake. Why do we need a third truck? I don't know. We haven't got the people to man it, I don't think. And also at the fire department, why do we need 3 pickups sitting at the fire department? I know it's said up there that it was taken out because of the gas tax paid or something, but gas tax paid, if you don't do that, gas tax will pay somebody else. And, sorry I lost there. 3rd Avenue, I really got a problem with that. and I think Facebook, if you read all of Facebook, you would have a problem too. We're still an industrial town in a lot of people's mind, including my own. And to take 2 lanes of traffic away, to have single lanes, we're still gonna have trucks going through town. And I think we're way ahead of our time to even consider that. And the works yard, that's another I can't agree with. And McLean Mill Dam, I know this is dumped on the city of Port Alberni, but if we have to have a lot of expenditures for the dam and stuff like that, shouldn't we be going after Ottawa for a share of that? I know that there should be something there to help us out with it. We get the cost of everything, rebuilding and everything, and I think we should be going after Ottawa to help us out with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just let you know that we are trying to work with the federal government for funding on some of those issues. Thank you. Who would like to speak next? I'm sure everybody didn't come to just, oh, come on forward.
Okay, my thoughts on the beautification.
If you could just state your name and your address,
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry. Ann Gagnon. Legal name is Catherine Gagnon, and I'm at 5260 Tebow Avenue.
Thank you.
I am 76 years old, and I came here when I was 3. So I've been here. I've been inside the city, and I have been residing outside the city many, many times. If any of you are of around my age or over 50, you've probably heard of Freely's store, which was outside the city. But then when I married, I came into the city. And so I do know what it's like to live in and out of the city and whether you pay taxes or not. I've always thought something should be done about that. Anyways, on the beautification plan, I don't understand how the council can even be considering beautifying 2 blocks of this city when so many streets outside of those 2 blocks also need work. We need a lot of infrastructure planning and paying for. As far as the beautification, it's been tried before. I remember when they made it a mall, and at considerable expense, they paved all the streets. There's a few of the pavers still up there. They took it down to Harbor Key, so they probably reused the bricks. But it cost a lot of money. Some of the trees that are planted there and the planters also were there from there. But they ended up taking all the traffic, not just back to 2 lanes, but all the traffic away, and everybody didn't even have parking lots. They put them in since. I don't see the point of that. If you want business to come there, you've got to help the city itself. We have a problem with crime. We can't afford half of the things that the city needs. And I think council, instead of beautifying, needs to address those problems. The crime, the homeless, and the drug addiction. You have drug addiction on Lower 3rd Avenue. That's a problem. It's probably creating a lot of the crime. Nothing's being done. The police, all they need is more money, more money. Everybody needs more money. But there isn't more money out of the taxpayers, and nobody seems to realize that. And pretty soon, we're not going to have a town. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. I think we had a gentleman over here standing up.
My name's John Zoot. I live 3776 Waterhouse Street. Lived here all my life. I'm 60. I'm looking at retirement in 5 years, maybe not, with all these tax increases. And my biggest problem is, and there's social media on Facebook about this, is 3rd Avenue beautification. $1.5 million. There's a hell of a lot of potholes in this town that need to be fixed, even on my street. And I put up with it, and I just see my taxes go up and up on everything. Everybody wants something. My income is going to go down. I can't afford to retire here. I see a lot of people that are retired. My parents, I don't know how they do it. They got half of what I make, and I make a lot of money. But it's going to end here soon. How am I gonna pay it when you wanna spend money on Third Avenue? Go to 2 lanes, parallel parking, like really? They have enough problems up here parking, angle parking, when it is busy up there. And now you wanna spend $1.5 million to reduce it? Where are the trucks going? They drive Third Avenue all the time. They ain't going through APD. We're on strike there. Nobody's going through there. You know, that's all I gotta say on it.
Thank you. We are not considering spending $1.5 million on
Whatever
Third
it is,
Avenue.
it's still money. It's money, period.
It's a third of that, but.
Doesn't matter, still money.
Okay. Who would like to speak next? Jane, you don't need to introduce yourself.
But the public might on TV.
I'm on Chatterbox. I'm a moderator. My name's Jane Fannenschmidt. I live at 2110 Anderson Avenue for 35 years. I'm 70. Paid lots of taxes too. And my main concern to be here tonight is because of Third Avenue, reducing the traffic to 2 lanes, having parallel parking, and snow removal and emergency vehicle issues. So we have an accident on Third Avenue in those 2 blocks. Has that issue been addressed about first responders coming in, and then we're just tied up? I know we can go down 2nd or over to 4th, but that's one issue I have, is snow removal and emergency vehicles. You plow the snow up, and even with 4 lanes, it's hard to park when the snow comes. And I've been here when there's been snow like that for 3-4 weeks. So maybe it won't come anymore because of global warming and climate change. Okay, so we got the snow removal and the emergency vehicles. Has that been addressed? And if the inconvenience of doing this to the businesses, will they ever recoup? Like when you watch TV and see areas in Victoria or big cities like Vancouver, when they're modernized, doing this kind of project in a part of Vancouver, the merchants are screaming like they lose all their business for a whole year because people don't want to go downtown when the construction. Are you going to do 1 lane at a time? We'll get a plan, right? And so that's an issue too that merchants should have to look at when they consider. Be careful what you wish for, because okay, so now you've got your 2 lanes and your nice big sidewalks, and nobody's still coming. We have a strike right now. Our economy's hurting. Maybe that's the reason businesses are hurting right now. Nothing to do with traffic flow. I live on Anderson. I get more trucks past me than probably down Third Avenue. I'm right on the corner from Ship Creek, and it doesn't bother me. I'm not complaining about Anderson Avenue. I don't care. The ruts, like, are you going to repair the ruts? I've walked across Third Avenue, and you have to dip down, and it's like, it's a skating rink when it's icy, or in the rain, there's pooling down all 4 lanes. So we got that. If you were gonna do it, I wouldn't care if it was free. I don't want it. I don't care if you spend 5 cents on it. I don't want it. And we have 480 people that don't want it on our Chatterbox poll. 621 now, and it's 32-4. 32 say okay, and how many? 600 don't want it.
We've seen those Facebook polls be wrong in the past.
Yes. Okay.
But thank you, and Jane, that is. We've seen the poll, and we understand the concern that's out there. We also do know that a lot of the information that's being put out there is not correct. So I understand that, I think you're bringing forward some valid issues here, and I want you to know that we are listening to the concerns people are bringing forward. We are not ready to move forward with this project as is. I appreciate that you're bringing forward some constructive concerns, rather than just saying you don't like the project, which you don't have to like the project, right? That's your right. I will just let you know, thank you for your concern concern around the merchants. I have been to the Uptown Merchants Association meetings, and I am going back to another one this week or next week. It's in my calendar. So the merchants are a full part of this process, and we are not doing this without, you know, their engagement or considering them.
But even all the merchants aren't on board either. Like some of the merchants there, I've been talking to a couple, don't even belong to the Merchants Association there because maybe it's a waste of time to them. They're happy, they're doing their own little business. They're fine. They don't need this beautification. But I looked at that overhead picture on that pole that we have on Facebook. We have a beautiful 3rd Avenue, absolutely stunning. There is nothing wrong with 3rd Avenue physically. It's the fear factor of crime. We have little ladies that now are coming in couples. Couples have to come to the bank because there's panhandling. There's drugs in the needles in the planters. And when I held my car show down there, you notice them that, I'm sorry, there's different levels of people in our downtown that are undesirable. And our car show was a real success down there, and we won't be able to ever have another car show there with just 2 lanes. But, and
Sure
your markets, your markets you had lots of space and lots of, and you're gonna narrow it down to.
There's going to be
There's
just
still-
as much space.
Yes, I know. But we don't need to make it how you want to make it. I'm just saying. I like 3rd Avenue, it's beautiful. And I wouldn't spend 5 cents on it.
Thank you. Okay, would anyone else like to speak? Come on forward.
So, my name is Rob Jackson. I'm born and raised in Port Alberni. I moved back here. I transferred back here 2.5 years ago. My mom and dad purchased a smokestack almost 40 years ago. My dad was here tonight, but he couldn't stay any longer. He had to go back to the store. When it comes to the 3rd Avenue beautification, in my opinion, it does need some beautification. My dad agrees with that as well. I think the information put forward that I've read so far on a limited basis, I haven't fully read all the plans, but I've gotten snippets from the AV Times. Parallel parking, there is no parking on 3rd Avenue. There is angle parking. There are 50 cars parked in Paul Soroya's parking lot that isn't a parking lot. Let's make no bones about that. 30 years ago, he put up a no parking sign there, or whoever owned it at the time. That created problems downtown. So there is not an abundance of parking. Parking on 2nd Avenue, the 2 city-owned lots that I believe that are there, but back in the 80s and the 70s that were full of business people and that sort of thing, I wouldn't go there today. My line of work, I happen to be around town and I see a lot of things that most people here don't see because they're at home sleeping. I'm not speaking on behalf of my work, by the way, either, because I'm not allowed to. But downtown has its issues. As all different kinds of people are there during the day. When it's dark, it is not the same place. Gaga Square, a beautiful addition to our downtown 3rd Avenue. It's taken a hit over the last, I've been here 2.5 years. I've watched the cameras are ripped off. I see constant debauchery happening within that park at night. They put in extra lights. Needles, I go in with my dad in the evenings. In the summertime, I bring my own gloves. I pick up needles and drug paraphernalia on my own. I ask people to leave. You know, there's panhandlers. In my line of work, I deal with them on a regular basis. People downtown don't deal with that stuff. They don't like it. It scares them. It scares people away. I go back to the parking. Lighting. Lighting is a big thing. There isn't enough of it on 3rd Avenue.
That was beautiful lighting a few years back. They
Yeah.
wanted to upgrade then.
Yeah,
Not
so,
the city council,
Thank you.
but some.
no. So there are issues with 3rd Avenue. Money needs to be spent. I don't know about the ideas of taking 2 lanes down to 1. I don't know what the real plans are. I'm not educated on that. I don't know. But $500,000, That's a big chunk of money for the taxpayers of this town. I own a rental property within town on First Avenue. My dad owns the smokestack, the business itself, not the building, and I live out in the regional district, so I don't live in town, but I work here a lot. So I don't have much more to say than that. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your input, and I will just let you know, just for reference, that we have already asked our consultant to give us options for angled parking. Parallel parking wasn't something that we specifically asked for in the design, it just came in the design, and we do recognize that a reduction of 14 parking spaces, would have an impact. So that's something that we've heard that concern, and we're looking at seeing if we can amend the plan to address it. So, sure, come on forward.
Seating. So I grew up here. I was here when Woodward's and Woolworths and everything else was downtown, and Zellers. All the planters, where they are now on all the corners, had wooden benches that were beautiful, but downtown was different then. I believe the benches were taken out because they started to rot, and then they put in the existing planters. Also, they didn't want seating for the downturn in the economy was drawing other people. That's what I'm finding with Gaga Square. Sure. They talked about in that plan about putting extra benches and seating. I can tell you, in my experience, you don't want extra seating and benches. The coffee shop, the Steampunk, I go into the smokestack every day with my dad at different times, and I see people sitting there, and I'm thinking, yeah, they probably don't want them sitting at their tables or at their chairs. They're sitting there panhandling, doing whatever they're doing, scaring away regular customers. I bet you the people that work there are too scared to go out there to confront them. I don't have a problem with it. So a lot of times I just tell people to move along. The cement railings around Gaga Square, again, panhandlers, constantly panhandlers. The old Woolworths building that Merit Furniture uses as a warehouse, the bench or the stairs that are there, it's a bench, and it's a common place for people to sit and lollygag and drink their beer and do whatever they're doing. It's a seat. Extra seating would be undesirable on 3rd Avenue. That I can almost guarantee. So
thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I can address the seating. Regarding the seating in the Uptown area, I was on council then, and it was taken away because the merchants asked for it to be taken away because people were sleeping on those benches, and that's why we went to those types of benches, because it's a little more, it's not as comfortable. So just to address that.
Thank you. Michael.
My name is Michael Moore, 4701 North Park Drive. So I live right behind the Friendship Center. So first I'd like to say thank you for all the hard work that council and the mayor do, and for, was it Timmy Tips? For
You
all the
saw
hard
that
work.
up there, did you?
You told me to vote on San Francisco too.
Ooh, rough.
That was a bad Timmy tip.
Also, I'd like to say to Madam Mayor, next time you bring chocolate to a council meeting, that you should probably bring enough to share with everybody.
Actually, I usually do bring chocolate to council meetings.
So bring enough to share with everybody. Yes. So next I would like to say, I'm actually maybe in the minority here, and maybe in a minority on the poll, but I actually support the idea of revitalization for the Uptown Center. I do that with a steady caution, though. And this actually is not just directed at council, but it's also directed towards our communications with our public. Oftentimes we see with Facebook and with other social media platforms an unfortunate amount of disinformation that is passed along. I try to do my due diligence and listen to all sides of an argument before I make an opinion. And seeing that the City Council has looked for grants and has looked for alternative sources of funding for the Uptown revitalization, I see that there's an opportunity there. Now, $500,000 is an awful lot of money, and I believe that we probably could do an awful lot with revitalization up there with a lot less money. But as we're hopefully going to tie in sewer infrastructure and other needed infrastructure work in that space, perhaps that dollar figure is arrived at because of those things. I am unfortunately not privy to that information. Additionally, I would like to, note that tonight I unfortunately saw a lot of can kicking. So I see a lot of ways that we're trying to save money by deferring costs to my taxes next year. So as much as I appreciate you guys trying to reduce my overhead tax bill this year, not increasing it next year is just as important, or the year after, or the year after that, because God knows I'm not going to get to retire. That's just my profession. That has nothing to do with particularly with my taxes. Next, I really got to hammer home. Out of everybody I've seen come up here, and I'm not trying to single myself out, I live a block away from what is unfortunately referred to as the ghetto here. And what I see is I see the ghettoification of a neighborhood. I see crime, and I see systemic poverty being basically poured into an area. And when we look at improving our city, we need to look at it as improving it as a whole. The people will not move here. And I understand the idea of revitalization being an idea to draw, an economic base, make it a livable city, bring in new families, bring in young families with these, new jobs. But at the end of the day, we have, I can't bring up the number exactly, but a double-digit percentage increase in petty crime. And those are what's reported. Statistically speaking, I would hazard a guess to say that it is significantly more than that even. For all the things that have gone missing out of my yard, it's just not worth my time making a phone call. And I am a pretty squeaky wheel when it comes down to it. I hope that the city can find some means in this budget to find some kind of revitalization, but not just for the 3rd Avenue extension, but like all of 3rd Avenue. To try to find ways that they can deal with the overdose prevention site as it stands. Ways for the community to work and get a better understanding of what's going on down there. We have one pillar of a 4-pillar approach. Mm-hmm. Without the other 3 pillars, 25% is not cutting it, right? And there's a lot more we can be doing. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you. If we could not clap after people speak, it's a rule we have in council chambers because often clapping when you like what you hear leads to booing when you don't like what you hear. And we like to keep this a room where everyone can speak without the fear of being booed. So no clapping for Michael. Sure. We will allow that.
Michael Moore, 4701 North Park Drive. So first I'd like to say thank you for the clapping. Secondly, I actually didn't make a point of coming back up here just to be a smartass. I came back up to say that the decisions you guys have to make now will affect not only this 4 years or this year, but the decisions you make now have to be hard because the decisions you're going to make next year are going to suck even more. And the ones after that, good luck. Stuff breaks down, and we constantly are going to keep paying for it. I've seen my property value go up dramatically in the last 5 years. When I first bought my house versus what it's being appraised at now, there was a significant change. And it's hard to adjust to those kind of those realities. Each one of you is a property owner. You all know what that feels like. When you think about that and when that happens and you look at those numbers, I think really just take a moment to sit down and imagine that you were struggling to pay that bill, right? Imagine you were having a hard time trying to decide whether or not it's, my bills or my insurance, or, we have people in this town who are literally having to make the decision. Do I pay my mortgage or do I cancel my insurance, cross my fingers and hope the fire department's quick, right? I mean, that's an unfair place to be. So I'm sorry.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward and speak? I will, just if nobody else who hasn't spoken yet wants to, but you're certainly welcome to. We just like to give... Absolutely. So just asking if anyone else would like to come forward.
Ann Gagnon on Tebow. Anyways, I know you meant well, and I can see that, but you haven't heard any boos. But you have many times through here, no one can make a motion, and yet then I've heard a motion being made and then changed into a recommendation and a motion or whatever. I don't quite understand all of that. And I don't understand this business of in-camera meetings and camera meetings. Seems to me, I remember part of your electioneering was that you wouldn't have in-camera.
It certainly was not. They are a part of the business of every municipality.
Okay.
So definitely not.
I would like to know how much the the gentleman that does the consult for this beautification plan was paid. What was his fee?
Or her fee. CAO?
I don't have that information, but we can bring it to
Okay.
a future meeting.
Thank you. We'll get that information.
Could I ask you to email it to me, and I will give you my email address?
Yeah, so, and the information belongs to council, so when it goes live in the council's agenda, I will email it to you, but I can't give it to you before council gets it.
Okay. I'm getting older, so I wasn't sure if I would possibly be in the hospital or someplace else when the next meeting, because it seems like it's
If you are, I will bring it to
very,
you.
anyways.
Okay.
And then I would also like to know what grant is available for this money that you've already put aside.
So the grant, I don't have the name of the grant stream off the top of my head, but it used to be Bike BC, I think.
Active transportation.
Yes, because I
Thank
hear
you.
that
Yeah.
the city council is going to be at a meeting at Quality Foods tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
No, staff will be there. I'll be there, and the city planner will be there to meet
Okay,
with
well, I'll probably see you again.
Okay.
Anyways, even with that one, and I'm going to just say it so that all of council will also hear it. The grant is for bike lanes. I have an e-bike, and I have really been using the bike lanes in town. Some of them are very well thought out and necessary. But I would like to know if you have bike lanes on Upper 3rd Avenue for 2 blocks, how I'm going to get there along 3rd Avenue. Because at the moment, if I want to come and see my friends or some of my other friends and family that live on the south end, we come along through the pulp mill because we do not dare go onto Stamp Avenue, Gertrude, or Johnson. And then we go at Redford up a couple of blocks and cross over and go either 4th, 5th, 6th, because we also will not go on 10th Avenue. And then we go up Dunbar and then on the way. So I do not see where bike lanes for 2 blocks, with that kind of money, you could be putting all sorts of just straight bike lanes and never have any beautification. And I think they would be more used than uptown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will send you a copy of our active transportation plan as well.
Thank you.
CAO, write that down. Would any other members of the public like to speak? Sure, come on forward.
My name's Debbie. I just moved here, just bought a house on 10th, and haven't paid taxes here a lot. I moved here because the prices were affordable. And so I just wondered what percentage or what part of the budget covers helping the clinic or, homelessness or people who maybe need a bit of counseling or rehab, or do we give any input cost to those kinds of people, or is there any room in the budget?
So
to
those
help that issue?
Yeah, thank you. So those are all provincially funded initiatives and provincial responsibilities. So technically they're supposed to be funded by the provincial government and some of them by the federal government. They're not supposed to be funded by a municipal government. That said, a huge priority of this council is housing. So we are partnering on several housing projects that are in the works in the community for affordable housing and supportive housing. We're partnering on those projects by donating land in some cases, because that's something that we have to give that doesn't necessarily affect our budget. We're partnering in another way by reducing or waiving the development cost charges. What we're seeing because of that is a huge investment in land in housing from BC Housing. We know that we have a housing shortage in our community for working people and seniors, and we also know that we have a huge homelessness problem in our community, and we want to see improvements made to that. So we are partnering on those projects, even though they're not necessarily municipal responsibilities, and I think we're getting more funding because of it. Additional to that, we are trying to, working with some organizations where we're able to a bit more innovative kind of contracts, like with Canadian Mental Health Association. Again, not a municipal responsibility, but we see that the crime going on and the needles that people talk about finding in the community, whether they are our responsibility or they are the responsibility of another level of government, we see them as a priority to make an improvement on. So we've partnered with Canadian Mental Health Association to work on some proactive programs and cleanup programs as well. And additional to that, we are, we're meeting pretty consistently with provincial ministers, Minister of Health, Minister of Mental Health and Addiction, Minister of Public Safety, to bring forward requests for some pilot projects to happen in our community, because we know that we have a lot of crime in our community, and we know that we have a high poverty rate and one of the highest in the province child poverty rate. So we know that we have a lot of issues in the community that we need to make progress on, and it's challenging because they're not issues that should be the responsibility of the municipal government, but because we don't feel what's happening is adequate, they are our responsibility. So we are working on those as well. And lastly, we know that policing is a huge part of this, and our policing budget is already the highest or the most expensive per capita in the province. But we did add the equivalent of to our budget of a municipally paid for RCMP officer, and then we went and advocated to the provincial government, and we got them to increase the provincially funded RCMP officers as well. And additional to that, we have a huge section of our community, our strategic plan, dedicated to non-police strategies to reduce crime. So we're trying to work at this from all angles. It's not always necessarily direct funding from our budget. Sometimes it's a one-time contract with somebody to have CMHA employ people to pick up needles, or sometimes it's a donation of land, and sometimes it's just really consistent advocating to higher levels of government. But we recognize that those issues are the top issue in our community, and it's challenging that they're not necessarily our direct responsibility. Yeah. So thank you. Councillor Haggard.
May I just add to that, Madam Mayor? There's been a lot of expression of concerns about the drug issues in our community. For those people who don't know, there is a 2-day workshop that is free. It's going to be at the Italian Center, dealing with the opioid crisis from 9 to 4 on February 5th and 6th. And this is a community problem. It is not just a city council problem. So I would encourage anybody who is concerned about the drug crisis in our community to attend this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of council? Councillor
I'll
Haggard.
just make another comment. There's also a lot of concern about crime, and we are trying to work on that as much as possible. But just for the record, the only time I've ever been accosted by anybody was when I was walking downtown Nanaimo.
Nanaimo's much more dangerous. The numbers actually don't back that up, unfortunately. Okay, that's right. We'll get Nanaimo really not liking us next. Okay, thank you everyone for sitting through this entire meeting. We appreciate your input and hope you come back to our next council meeting. Would somebody like to move adjournment? Second? All in favor? Carried.